Greetings! This is Amy Wentley. This is video 2024-1, Steeking with Crochet Reinforcement. This video covers steeking your knitting, and steeking, S-T-E-E-K-I-N-G, is a way that you can reinforce the stitches of a knitted piece and then cut them. And that sounds a little scary, cutting open your knitting. I'll tell you one reason you might want to do that is if you were doing a project with stranded knitting with two colors and you wanted to knit it in the round, the whole piece, and just use knit stitches to do the color work here, the stranded knitting here. If you wanted to knit this in the round and then cut open the armholes and the neck hole to make a vest, you would use steeking. And so what I would do is when I got to the armholes here, I cast on a number, I think about 5 extra stitches under the armhole, that then I continued to knit in the round. This band is added later. So the sweater is knit in the round, but these parts here were actually cut open later. So if you look at it this way and try to ignore the bands here, you will see that everything at one point was a circle, and it got to be a little smaller circle here because of the missing pieces for the neck and all, but we were able to do all our shaping, everything done in the round, and then we bound off the shoulders and then cut open this extra steeking stitches that we added here. Now this isn't something that you just need to do for stranded knitting with two colors. I also did it with another sweater that this one was done from the bottom up, and you separated when you got to the armhole, and you were supposed to do the front and the back flat after you did the whole sweater in the round. And I didn't want to do that because my tension is different when I knit flat than when I knit in the round. So I just knit this sweater as a big tube, and I added steeking stitches for the armholes, and I added a few steeking stitches for the neckline. So I was able to knit all of this body in the round and then later cut open for the neck and the sleeves. So that's just an overview of steeking. In this video, I will be working on a steeking swatch to demonstrate for you how this procedure is done with a reinforced crochet stitch. If you want to follow along, you can make a steeking swatch. I cast on 50 stitches. I worked with magic loop in the round, and I worked 15 rounds, and then actually it's this way, and then I bound off. So this is a swatch that's in the round. And one more time, cast on, if you want to use a 16-inch needle, you can cast on as many stitches as you think that needle will hold, and depending on what yarn you have, that could be anywhere between probably 50 and 70 stitches, something like that. And so work 15 rounds and then bind off, and you'll have a tube like this. Okay? You will also need, I have this swatch on a blocking board now so that you'll be able to see the stitches a little better. If you want to block your swatch, because it's going to roll like this, you can get it wet. You can just lay it out on a table or pin it on a blocking board like this and just let it dry. It'll probably take a day. You might have to swap it over or turn it inside out because it is a double layer of knitting. that will be drying. You can also put it, you know, on a pot or a vase or something like that to dry it. But it's still going to roll on the top and bottom because it's stockinette stitch. Okay, so you will also need a contrasting color yarn that is 100% wool. Your swatch needs to be 100% wool too. They should not be superwash wool. Steeking is a little bit more difficult with superwash wool because it doesn't have the grabbing properties. So you should use 100% wool for your sweater and 100% wool for reinforcing the steek. You'll also need some contrasting color yarn for the purposes of keeping a guideline in your work. You'll need a tapestry needle. You'll need a small sharp pair of scissors, and you also need a crochet hook. And the crochet hook needs to be 1 or 2 sizes smaller than your knitting needle. So let me show you. I have a ruler here. I got this one at the Hillsborough Yarn Shop. And if you look at this, and I'm going to zoom in for you, you can see that it has these numbers on the top of these things that look like fractions here are the millimeter size of your knitting needle or your crochet hook. Okay, so for this project I used I think I used a 10.5 needle, US 10.5. So if you look at the bottom, you can see the US needle size. So 10.5 is here. And the millimeters are 6.5. And a 10.5 crochet hook, that's the diameter of the crochet hook, is equivalent to a crochet hook K. Okay, and I want to work a size or 2 below that, so I chose 5.5 millimeters and I chose a crochet hook I. I could probably have gone with an H also. Okay, so that's what you're going to need to follow along with the class today, and our next step will be to get started. Let's get started reinforcing our steeks. So this is our swatch that we're going to be using, and what we want to do to get started now, remember you don't have to have this pinned down like this right now. I have it pinned down so I can zoom in really closely and show you some things, and then I'll be taking the pins out to work. Okay, you will be working on, in this case, with 3 steeking stitches. Generally in a project that's steeked, I will add 5 steeking stitches. That's actually going to leave you 1 on each side as a boundary. The 3 stitches that we're actively going to be working on are the middle 3 stitches of however many stitches we decided to make for the steek. I generally work with 5, some people work with 7. Another thing that happens too is a lot of times if you're doing a stranded project and you have more than one color, people will often alternate colors during, let's say, these 5 stitches. So it would be blue and white and blue and white and blue to make it a little easier for you to follow the straight lines when you're reinforcing the stitches or when you're cutting. So just remember that if you can. And you'll notice on this project, this vest project, that's what we did here. There was a border stitch, and then this is 1 column of stitches, and the next column was picked up. Sorry for the alarm. And so you can see there was like a striping effect here that helped us pick up the stitches. Let's take a look at our swatch a little closer, and we're going to identify the stitches that we're going to be reinforcing. So what I want you to do is, if you did a swatch, take the swatch and you're going to have the tails where your rounds began and ended, okay? You also have a cast on edge and a bound off edge. If you know what those are, if you can recognize them, mine usually they've got this appearance on the bottom with a long tail cast on, and this is with a lace bind off. So my bind off usually shows a little bigger chains, so I know that's my bind off. If you don't know which is which, it's fine right now. Just pick one and say this is your cast on and this is your bind off, okay, if you don't know. And what I want you to do is fold it along the tails that you have here, and we are actually going to work with stitches halfway along this folded piece, okay? So that's down here. Here's my tails. This is halfway along, okay? In this video, we're going to be doing crochet steeks and then cutting the yarn. In the next video, we're going to be doing a sewn steeks and cutting through the other side. Surprise! So we'll use one swatch for two demonstrations. Okay, I'm going to come in real close on this. And while you are knitting your project, while you're working on your project, you're probably going to be putting special markers around your 5 or 7 steek stitches, okay? And this one pin here is where one marker was in my knitting, and this pin here is where the other was. Now what we want to do is identify the center column among your steek stitches. So these are the 5 stitches that were added here, and these are the 3 in the middle. So this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and these are the 3 in the middle. And I'm going to give these columns a particular designation, okay? So this in the middle is going to be column A. Now if you look at the stitches here in these 3 columns, we're talking about columns, and a column is a column of knit stitches, and these are going to look like V's from this direction. Okay, and you'll notice I put the pin on the edge of this column of V's. This is column C. This is column A in the middle. And then this is column B on the right hand side. A, B, C. And at this point I'm going to show you a picture identifying each one of these. Okay, so this is column B, and these are V's, a column of V stitches. This is column A, this is column C. How I want to start out is I want to be able to visually, very easily see where the line is I'm going to cut in the future. Okay? And that is going to be straight down the middle of column A. Okay? And I have some yarn here that I want to use for, identifying this guideline. This is a dark yarn. It's high contrast to the yarn I'm using. And I just want to use this as a visual guide. So I'm going to cut a piece of yarn, and this is fingering weight. My project yarn is, this is worsted weight. Okay, and actually the yarn is called Steek Lopi. It's a Icelandic yarn. Okay, so what I want to do is first I'm going to find out which is my middle column. Oh, I want to also, let's put the fingering weight yarn on a tapestry needle. Okay, so this, let's look for V's. So this looks good. I see V's here. Is that my middle stitch? I think it might be, because this is C, this is A, this is B. As long as you're consistent and keep these columns identified, you're going to be fine. So we found out what the middle one is. And so I'm going to put my darning needle in there and go right down the middle of these stitches. And you will see how I have a right leg and a left leg to each one of those stitches. And I want to be able to see this yarn on the top. So I'm going to take a big stitch here to the middle and pull this yarn through. Okay. And leave a tail up at the top. And then I'm going to take another stitch down this column. Make sure you follow the column. Here's where my yarn came up. Come all the way down. The next to the last stitch here, I am going to capture. And I'm actually coming under the ladders between this in the middle of this stitch. So if you take your piece now, and I'm going to start to unpin it because I'm ready to pick it up soon and work with it. This is going down the middle of column A, which means that this is column B, that's the middle of column A, there is column C. Okay, you see that. And if you pull this apart now, you can see the ladders under this purple yarn here, and those ladders are what actually are going to ultimately be cut. Now we will get the crochet hook and the yarn ready to be able to do our reinforcement. So here's your yarn you're going to use for reinforcement. It's 100% wool as well as my work. This is actually a worsted weight yarn, but it's a little lighter than the one I have. I could also, with a worsted weight swatch like this, I could also use a fingering weight yarn. If you use a lighter yarn, the Steek is going to be less bulky. Okay, I'll show you just as an example. This was made with a worsted weight yarn. You can see the purple along here. This one was actually done with a fingering weight yarn. It's a little bit glary because it's such a high contrast, but it's a little more less bulky, is a good way to put it. So you're going to start out with your crochet hook, and you're going to put a slip knot on your crochet hook. If you don't know how to do this, here's how. You lay your tail down and go ahead and loop. Lay your tail down, and how about I back up a little bit so you can see a little better. Okay, so you've got your tail there, and just make a loop over it. Okay, I want you to hold this end here and put your fingers through this loop and reach under here and get this yarn that's attached to your ball of yarn. Okay, grab the loop that's attached to your ball of yarn and your tail and pull them in opposite directions, and that gives you a knot that slips. Okay, so you're going to put that on your crochet hook. Okay, this method is great for people who have crocheted before. If you haven't crocheted before and this is uncomfortable for you for any reason, you can try the sewing method also. But give them both a chance just to see what you like best. Okay, so you now have a slip knot on your needle or on your hook, and that's where you start. Okay. Now if you look at here's my swatch again with my guideline on it. Okay. Notice, I'm going to come in again. Now if you look at here's my swatch again with my guideline on it. Okay. Notice, I'm going to come in again. Okay, notice that this is the middle of column A, and right above column A, right here, is a bind off stitch, and right here above column B is a bind off stitch. Okay, and what we want to do is we want to secure our reinforcement yarn at the bind off so that it doesn't come untied. Okay, and so we're going to do that with a crochet stitch. All right, and what we're going to do is we're going to start out, this is column B, this is column A. We're going to start out between these two bind off stitches between column A and column B. And I'm going to take my crochet hook and I'm going to go in between these two bind off stitches, in between them. There's a stitch underneath them, and that's actually at the top of column B. So go ahead and put it between the top of column B and the top of column A. So it's actually going under column A's bind off. Okay? Whoa, and leave it there. So now you'll see you have the reinforcement yarn on your needle. You put this through the two legs of the bind off stitch, and you're going to wrap your working yarn, not the tail. We don't need to fuss with the tail. Wrap the working yarn around the needle. So you're going to actually come around to the right, under the needle, and up and over again. Now hold this, because it staying tight is going to make this easier for you to pull through. And you can turn the hook a little bit and just pull it through that loop. Okay? You now have two loops on your hook. I want you to just wrap the yarn one more time behind and then over the top of the hook. Hold on to this yarn, grab the hook, and pull this stitch through both of those loops. So you end up with one loop on your crochet hook, and that ties this yarn to the top of columns A and B in the bind off there. Now you'll notice that you have your dark yarn in the middle of column A. This is column B. Okay. what we want to do is insert our hook under the left leg of the stitch in column B. That's where my thumb is, right there at my thumbnail. And then under the right leg of column A. So watch what I do. I'm going to put it under the left leg of B, and then under the right leg of A, right in the middle of that V. There you go. So now I have a loop of my reinforcing yarn, the left leg of column B, the right leg of column A. And then I'm going to wrap my yarn and pull it through, both of these legs. Okay, both of the legs, the left leg and the right leg. I'm going to pull it through the legs, and now I have 2 reinforced stitches on my hook. I'm going to wrap again and pull it through those 2 loops at the same time. You'll notice that I'm holding my working yarn in my left hand and my ball of yarn is coming off the right side. So that was your first stitch, and that's the left leg and the right leg being pulled up. And what's happening is it's pulling column A away from the other side. So you can see those ladders there, and those are what you're going to cut. You don't want to ever cross over that line. Again, we're going to start under the left leg of column B. We're going to go down to the next stitch. That's the left leg of column B, the right leg of column A. We wrap, pull through both of the column stitches, and then through both of the reinforcement stitches, and that gives us our second reinforcement. Okay, and you'll see how it's pulling away, pulling column A apart. So left leg of left leg of B, right leg of A. And if you look at these are kind of shaped like a hat, not a V, because our stitches in this orientation are V's. But when you take the left side of B and the right side of A, you're looking at a hat. So you've got hats under on your hook right now. So you're going to wrap the hook around the front here and pull it through the 2 loops, and then pull it through, pull it through the reinforcing yarn. A couple of things to bear in mind is you don't want to put your hook through the same stitches twice in a row because they'll come out. You don't want to pull too tight because it will maybe ruffle. And let me think. I think that's it. I think we're good there. So don't do it twice in the same 2 stitches. Okay, so I'm going to wrap, and then I wrap and pull through the 2 stitches on my hook. And look, as you go down, it's going to start to get a little easier to see what you're doing. Now you'll see how this stitch on my hook is pulling up those 2 legs. Well, I don't want to go under there because I already did. That's why they're pulling up like that. I go down to the next 2 stitches, the left leg of B, the right leg of A, and I'm going to keep going. And I keep going like this. That one's pulling up, so it's this one down here. I keep going like this until I reach the other end of my swatch, the cast on end. So I am going to pause right now, and I'm going to catch up to the bottom, and I will show you how to finish off this reinforcement on the right side of our swatch. I'll be right back when I get there. All right, I'm close to the end here. So I'm going to go ahead and do one more left leg of B, right leg of A, wrap, and pull through both stitches. And then when I get to the bottom of the column, I'm going to come down to the cast on stitch right down here. This is column B, okay? Because you can see I pulled up the last stitch, column B's right, column B's left, column A's right. Then I'm going to come down here to the stitch under and in column B, and I'm going to punch my needle through. That's on the end, okay? I punch my needle through, and I'm going to try to get that guide yarn out of the way. I'm going to wrap and pull through the cast on. Oop. Okay. And then I'm going to wrap and pull through both of those reinforcement loops. There's two there. And then I'm going to cut my yarn and I'm going to pull it tight. So I'm going to cut my yarn. I'm going to move back so you can see my hands a little more. There we go. Okay. And there's my reinforced steek. Now the one thing I want to point out is that this is a little bulky. So I think I would choose to use a, what do you call it, fingering weight yarn. Thank you. I'm going to pull my yarn through, knot it at the end there, and then I want to see what I've done. Okay. You want to actually be a little aggressive here. And what you want to do is make sure that you have not crossed this guideline. So you need to pull every line apart and make sure that you can see the ladders that you're going to cut. You can see them there under the guideline. And you want to make sure that if you cut along that guideline, you're not going to be cutting any of the reinforcement yarn. So you will not be cutting the blue yarn. You're going to be cutting in between. And so you've now got your one side set up, and now we'll cover the other side. Now we'll start the second side of our reinforcement. What we're going to do at this point then is we're going to turn the whole swatch upside down. Okay, so 180 degrees. So right now your reinforcement stitches are on the right. We're going to turn this 180 degrees. And let me just back this out a little bit for you so you can tell how it looks now. Reinforcing stitches on the left, and you're going to reinforce this column now. Now this column of stitches here is actually, let me come in closer so you can see, it's actually the other part of the stitch in column A. So this was column A. The guideline goes right down column A. You're going to be, this is going to be a little easier for you to see, I think, is you're actually going to be picking up under the, this ends up being, since you're upside down, your columns now are hats. Okay, so you'll see the second half of column A here is like an upside down V, like a hat. Okay, column, this is now column C, and it's an upside down hat. So you're going to be taking the left leg of column C and the right leg of column A, remembering that this is upside down, and you're going to be going through them like that. So you'll be seeing V's that you're putting your needle under. So what we're going to do is we're going to start out again with a piece of yarn. We're going to put a slip knot on our needle, our hook. So here's the end, and we loop the yarn over like that. We're going to hold the end between our thumb and our pinky and put our index finger and thumb in the loop. We're going to take this string that's attached to our ball of yarn and pull it through that loop and pull our tail to get a slip knot. Okay? The slip knot will go on our hook, and then we're ready to go. So the slip knot, when you finish up with the slip knot, it's going to be big like this. You put it on your hook, you pull the string that makes it tighter, and you're in business. Okay? So here's your swatch. It's now upside down. Your reinforcement from the last time is on the left. Your guideline's going down the middle. So what I want you to do is, you've got this column of stitches here. This is the right side of A and the left side of C. I want you to go up to the very top. This is your cast on edge, and I want you to punch through the cast on edge, and then take your yarn, your reinforcement yarn, not the tail, and wrap it behind and around the hook and pull it through. You now have 2 reinforcement loops on your hook. I want you to wrap again and pull this new loop through the 2 that are on your needle. Okay, don't pull these too tight. Don't keep them sloppy loose, but don't pull them too tight. Okay, so that is secured to your edge again. And then I want you to go under the left leg of column C and the right leg of column A, as you see them here, okay? Not as they were upside down before. Okay, and then you're going to go ahead and you're going to wrap your yarn again. So it's going under and over the top. Pull it through the Steek stitches, pull it through the reinforcement. And then it's going to be the left leg of C and the right leg of A again. Wrap, bring it under the legs, and then bring it under the reinforcement yarn. And we're going to go down, keeping that guide on the left, and we're going to go through each of these stitches and pull it through the stitches and then the loops on our hook, under both legs of the stitches and under the hook. Okay? And I am going to continue to do this all the way down. I'll show you how to tie off again, and then we'll get to cut our steeks. So I've gotten to the bottom of this column of Steek stitches, or Steek reinforcement stitches, and I've gone all the way to one stitch before the cast on. So that's my one stitch, and that's my cast on. So I'm going to do this last stitch. It's the left side of blue, the right side of red. Okay, and then we're going to take our hook and we're going to go into the cast on here and push it into the cast on. Wrap around once and pull it through the cast on. Wrap it around twice and pull it through the reinforcing stitches. And then we're going to cut this reinforcement yarn, the end, pull it through and knot it. Okay? And this is what we have now. So pull this apart and make sure that you don't have any of the reinforcement yarn crossing over, and you do not. All right? So our next step is going to be cutting the steek. So I'll be right back to do that with you. We're ready to cut the steek. Now, I suggest when you do this that you have good light. I suggest that you have a very sharp pair of small scissors. I suggest that you not be tired. Make sure you're at a fresh part of your day. I don't suggest drinking, although it's scary, but I'll take you through this. So we've got good light, we're not tired, we've pulled both of these reinforcement lines apart to make sure we don't have any crossover. And then you can actually either take out your guideline or not. I prefer to take out the guideline because it just visually gets in the way of my cutting. Okay? So you are going to start. It doesn't matter if you actually start from the top or the bottom. It does not make a difference. Take your scissors and put the point in for me, this is actually my bind off, so I'm doing it from the top, but looks like the bottom from here, right? It doesn't matter. And so I just put it through the first two stitches, make sure there's no overlap there with my reinforcement thread, and I cut that first little stitch. That's your first step. And then I put in a little more, maybe 4 stitches worth, and cut that. Isn't this exciting? And I take about 4 or 5 stitches worth and cut them. And 3 or 4 all the way to the end. There we go. And that's my knitting, and it's cut. So this reinforcement here is holding these ends in. Now normally your knitting doesn't unravel that way. It usually will drop and unravel this way. So that's one of the things that's keeping these stitches in place. The grabbiness of the wool yarn, the tightness of the stitches are all keeping these from unfurling. What you can do later in the project is, this was my column, my third column. I had 5 Steek stitches, so we can actually at one point, if we want, bend this over between your last Steek stitch and the body of your sweater, and this is where you could do things like pick up for the neck or pick up for the arm, the sleeves, or a band. that kind of thing. Okay? So there we are. We are all cut now. We now have a flat piece. We can pretend it's a cardigan or something. So please watch my next video. It is doing this, but with a needle, a tapestry needle and thread, instead of using a crochet hook. So please tune in for that. And we'll be using this same swatch, but the other side. Okay, so we'll see you then.